The human brain is a complex and remarkable organ that serves as the command center of the central nervous system in humans. One of the major frontiers in the study of human physiology and the question of what makes us who we are is brain research. The field of brain research is advancing rapidly, and I would contend that I have the most fascinating job in the world. The rate of change in our understanding of the brain is amazing, and a lot of what we believed we knew and understood about it turns out to be false or inaccurate. Nevertheless, some of these myths are more blatant than others. For instance, we used to believe that the brain could not change after childhood, yet it turns out that nothing could be further from the truth. Another myth about the brain is that it is silent when you do nothing and only partially used at any given time. Well, it turns out that this is also inaccurate. Even when you are at rest and not thinking, your brain is still very active. Therefore, technological advancements like MI have made it possible for us to make these and many other significant discoveries. Perhaps the most exciting, interesting, and transformative of these discoveries is that learning new information changes your brain, a phenomenon known as neuroplasticity. So, only 25 years ago, we believed that the only negative changes to the brain occurred after puberty, as a result of aging and the loss of brain cells, or as a result of injury like a stroke. The adult brain then underwent astounding levels of reorganization, according to research. And assumptive science has demonstrated to us that all of our behaviors alter our brains, and that these modifications are not age-related. I assume the news is positive. And they do in fact happen frequently. And most crucially, brain reorganization aids in rehabilitation following brain injury. Neuroplasticity is the key to each of these changes. So how does it appear? To facilitate learning, your brain can adapt in three very fundamental ways. The first is chemical, then therefore, your brain truly works by sending and receiving chemical signals between brain cells, or what we call neurons, which then set off a chain of events. Your brain can therefore raise the quantity or intensity of the chemical signaling occurring between neurons to support learning. Because of how quickly this kind of shift can occur. This is supportive of short-term memory or the short-term development of a motor ability. Altering the structure of the brain is the second method it can change to assist learning. Thus, the connections between neurons and the brain can change as a result of learning. The physical makeup of the brain is literally evolving right now. So, it takes a little longer. These alterations have an impact on long-term memory. The steady development of a motor ability. These processes are now interacting. I'll illustrate how by giving you an example. We've all attempted to master a new motor skill, such as playing the piano or juggling. And you've had the experience of improving steadily over the course of a single practice session and thought, I get it, and then you may have returned the next day and all those gains from the previous day were lost. What took place? The chemical signaling between your neurons was able to be increased by your brain in the short term. However, for some reason, those modifications did not result in the structural adjustments required to enable long-term memory. Keep in mind that learning happens over time and that short-term memory is not a reliable indicator of long-term memory. Long-term memories will now be supported by these physical changes, short-term memories by chemical changes, and learning will be supported by structural changes that can result in interconnected networks of brain regions. Additionally, they may cause some brain areas that are crucial for particular behaviors to expand or change their structural makeup. Here are some illustrations of that. Therefore, those who read Braille have larger hand sensory areas in their brains than those of us who do not. Similarly, if you are a right-handed person, your dominant hand motor region is on the left side of your brain as opposed to the opposite side. According to study, London taxi drivers are required to memorize a map of the city in order to obtain their license. Their spatial or mapping memories are stored in larger brain areas. The final method your brain might adapt to promote learning is by changing how it functions. As a brain area is used, it becomes easier and more excitable to utilize again. With learning, we observe that entire networks of brain activity are altering and shifting as your brain's areas that are more excitable change how and when they are active. So, chemical, structural, and functional alterations support neuroplasticity. And they are taking place throughout the entire brain. They might happen apart from one another, but they usually happen together in concert. Together, they assist learning, and they happen constantly. I just told you how awesomely neuroplastic your brain is, so there. Why then can't you easily learn anything you want to? What academic standards do our kids occasionally fail? Why do we tend to forget things as we get older, and why don't people with brain injury fully recover? This is what both restricts and promotes neuroplasticity. So this is what I research, and I focus on how it pertains to stroke rehabilitation. Recently, stroke dropped from being the third to the fourth most common cause of death in the United States. What actually transpires is that there has been no decrease in the number of stroke cases, which is great news. It turns out that it is really difficult to assist the brain in recovering after a stroke. We are simply better at keeping people alive after a major stroke. And, to be honest, we haven't come up with any efficient rehabilitative interventions. Overall, this has the effect of making stroke the most common cause of long-term impairment in adults worldwide. People who have stroke tend to be younger and have a longer lifespan. Furthermore, research reveals a reduction in the health-related quality of life for Western world who have had strokes. So it is obvious that we need to do a better job of aiding stroke victims in their recovery. And this is a significant societal issue that we are not resolving. What can be done, then? There is no doubt about anything. Your behavior is the most effective trigger for neuroplastic brain change. The issue is the amount of behavior and practice needed to acquire new motor abilities and revise previously learned ones. It's quite big, and the challenge is how to successfully provide these big doses of practice. Additionally, it's a very pricey issue. My research has therefore focused on creating treatments that prime or ready the brain for learning. These included robotics, exercise, and brain stimulation. A very individual patterns of neuroplasticity constitute a significant barrier to the creation of medicines that hasten recovery from stroke. Variability used to drive a human mad since it makes using statistics to test your data and your ideas quite challenging. Medical intervention trials are therefore especially created to reduce variability. But it's obvious from my research that the most significant and instructive data that we gather displays this diversity. We have learned a lot from researching the brain after a stroke. And I believe that these lessons are also useful in other contexts. The first lesson is that your behavior is what changes your brain the most. Nothing is therefore more helpful at helping you learn than practice. There is no neuroplasticity pill you can take. The fact is that you must put forth the effort. And in reality, my study has demonstrated that increasing the level of difficulty, or struggle, during practice really promotes both higher learning and brain structural change. The issue here is that neuroplasticity can function in both directions. It may be advantageous. You increase your knowledge and improve your motor skills. Though it can also be detrimental, you might have forgotten what you previously knew, developed a drug addiction, or developed chronic pain. As a result, your brain is incredibly malleable and is being molded by everything you do as well as everything you don't do, both architecturally and functionally. The second thing we've discovered about the brain is that there isn't a single method of learning that works for everyone. There isn't a set method for learning, then. Think about the adage that it takes 10,000 practice sessions to learn and perfect a new motor ability. I can tell you right now that it's not quite that easy. Some of us will need a lot more practice, while others might need a lot less. Since our plastic brains are shaped differently from one another, no single intervention will be effective for everyone. And now that we've come to this realization, personalized medicine is something we need to think about. So this is the notion that each individual needs their own intervention to maximize outcomes. In fact, the concept was inspired by cancer treatments. And it turns out that genetics have a significant role in matching certain chemotherapy regimens with particular cancer types. My research demonstrates that this also holds true for stroke recovery. Therefore, there are specific traits of brain structure and function that we refer to as biomarkers. Additionally, these biomarkers are demonstrating to be quite beneficial in assisting us in matching particular medicines with particular patients. And according to data from my lab, a combination of biomarkers appears to be the most accurate predictor of neuroplastic change and recovery patterns following stroke. And given how intricate the human brain is, that is not surprising. But given the distinctive form and function of each of our brains, I also believe we may think about this idea much more broadly. Everyone can benefit from what has been discovered regarding neuroplasticity after stroke. It's vital to use certain behaviors in everyday life. Your brain is being changed by each of them. And I think we should take into account personalized learning as well as personalized medicine. Your brain's individuality will have an impact on both your abilities as a learner and a teacher. Now that we have this concept, it is easier to comprehend why some children do well in traditional educational environments while others do not, as well as why some people learn languages quickly while others succeed at whatever sport they choose. Your brain won't be the same when you leave this room today as it was when you arrived. And while I find that to be fairly fantastic, each of you will have modified your brain in a unique way. Recognizing these variations, unique patterns, variability, and changes will pave the way for the next major advancement in neuroscience. It will enable us to create better, more efficient interventions and to link students with teachers and patients with interventions. And this is true for more than just recovering from a stroke. As a parent, educator, or manager, it applies to each of us. In addition, as a lifelong learner who is at TEDx today, you should research your learning style, practice what is good for your brain, stop what is bad for your brain, and repeat what is good for your brain. Learning involves putting your brain to the task it needs to do. Therefore, the optimal approaches will differ depending on the person, and even within the same person. Therefore, studying music may be quite easy for you, but learning to snowboard may be a lot more difficult. I hope you leave today with a fresh understanding of just how amazing your brain is. The environment around you is continually molding you and your malleable brain. you realize that everything you do, experience, and come into contact with alters your brain, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worst. So, as soon as you leave today, set out to develop the brain you desire. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please subscribe and hit the like button.